Hello there, replay crew. Welcome in, everybody. Right now I'm working on a little swatch with lemon yellow, cerulean blue, and we're going to add in a stripe of alizarin crimson. And we're going to explore how these three colors work with each other. Hello there, welcome in. Set that one aside to dry. Excellent. Got the thumb in the paint portion of the video out of the way. There's a gradient from lemon yellow to alizarin crimson. I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to work in another gradient. Ooh, a little bit of water would help. That crimson is very saturated, so it gets in the yellow and it overpowers it really quickly. So I'm just letting those two colors diffuse towards one another. Thoughts on Scientology? Scientology sucks. Actually, that's not true. They would have to improve before they reached level suck. How are you, Matthew? It's good to see you. Scientology's a cult, and they are messing with me today, which is why I am on for video number 3 of the day. Yeah. Some clown showed up in the chat of my first live today, and I just deleted it because it was nonsense. And I'm pretty sure it has something to do with Scientology. Oh! Is that your usual cold opening? I like it. I'm not complaining. Uh, uh, I approve. You get the thumbs up on it's an unorthodox protest, but I'm down with it. I'm here all for it. Yeah. Yeah, it's not as much fun. It's not as much fun when you discover you're preaching to the choir, or maybe it is. I don't know. How's your Friday going? This our usual late night haunt was not going because Friday, other plans. And I thought, well, I'll sneak up in here and I'll open a chat and we'll see. I know it's probably not as easy to find when it's on vertical, but and hopefully our usual haunt will get rolling. Although I had heard I had heard a rumor of karaoke, so I don't know. Oh gosh, is uh is that's gonna be done outpatient? I would hope so you can get clear of the anesthesia and then go home to your own space. I'm doing all right. It was a bit of a week, but I'm good. Wow. Now let's see. C7 to deal with chronic pain, right? Is that, did I remember? It's kind of spooky what all people pick up and chat, isn't it? Yeah, I also I saw your videos on Mount Baldy. That's some scary stuff, but you got some good firefighting helicopter shots there. It's really surprising how much they can do with those. I've been watching the BC, British Columbia Aviation Museum. They just, Coulson Aviation just retired one of their air tankers that was the Mars Hawaii, which is kind of like the Spruce Goose, but they've been using it. It's like this 80-year-old plane, and they are, I guess it's already decommissioned. They flew it on its final flight, and it's been dewatered, and they're getting it prepared to be an exhibit at the museum because it just getting parts for the engines and for the airplane itself just became untenable. So they said that thing had something like 10,000 horsepower, and I would have loved to have seen it at Sproat Lake coming in to pick up water, but kind of cool. Yeah. Well, it's probably a good thing that you um, were getting out of the path, and I I live west of the Cascades, and in 2020, first time in my life, I grew up here. I'm up in Oregon, and in 2020, first time in my life we've ever had a get ready evacuation order for this far west from the wildfires. But they actually they're just they're terrifying. Really, really. They get roaring, and I'm kind of where I live is just where a canyon funnels out into the valley, and the fire could easily have made its way down to where we were. Hi, Liza. How are you this evening? Thanks for stopping in. Matt, that's the thing. We're talking about wildfires, and Matt's mentioned that wildfires can create their own weather. And I think that's part of what I find really terrifying about them. And if you're anywhere near them and you can hear the way they roar and the sound they make, I've heard it compared to a locomotive, but it is just an unearthly. I don't think that even begins to cover what that sound is like. Dan K, hello, welcome in. So Liza, you're here with MD Media is down in Southern California, and he's in an area that's dealing with wildfires right now. So that's kind of hairy, right? Oh, Dan K. Well, it seems somebody showed up in my comments saying, what about yellow, red, and blue?" I don't know. Would you know anything about that? I'm teasing Dan a little bit. He left me a message. We've been we've been having a little fun with a game I'm calling Pick Any Three to see if we can use any three colors for our pebble drawings. And this was pink, purple, and teal. And I thought that turned out pretty well, so I'm giving it another go tonight. Yeah, here was our last drawing off the pink, purple, and teal. It ended up with a couple more colors in there, but hey, if that's the most mischief I get in my comments, I will take it, Dan K. I was working on going live earlier today and just I had more trolling, and it's so calculated that it feels a bit targeted. So I expect that gets back to my oh, I've got my palette off screen here. I think that probably has to do with our friends over at Scientology. So they could suck it. They're not going to chase me away. I will be here doing my thing. And the more they drop in and give me a hard time in the comments, the more likely I am to go live several times a day. So You want to create critics, by all means, just stay on it, buddy, whoever you are out there. What was that for sass? Oh, you didn't miss anything. Kelly and I Kelly and I took a chat down memory lane and were commiserating about our trying to think of a funny way to put it. It's not really that funny, but I was married in my 20s, and I was kind of up against an anniversary of something that wasn't very pleasant. So we were yapping about that and just jawing like a couple of old girlfriends. And so I I set it on I set it on private. There wasn't any particularly great art, and it ended up being. I might edit out. There were parts of it that were pretty cool. So yeah, Matthew accidentally trolled somebody. It's like, wait a minute. Whoops. I, I am amused. Yeah, Matt came in with a big opener. So what do you think about Scientology? And like I had an answer ready to go. That must be you're winning, Matt. You're getting your message out. If we've got people who just automatically can say the way they treat their members is it sucks. I think the more I play with this, the more of a mess I make. So I'll set that aside to dry. I know you're so innocent. Hi, Maya. Yeah. So Dan had the what about red, yellow, and blue, and um, when you put washes over, it doesn't really turn into orange, purple, and green. So I think the first question is, what do those colors look like, one over top the other? And the answer is that it's nothing very subtle. It's pretty bold. And the bases that I do for the pebble drawings, I like things that are a little bit more subtle. So on this card, I'm just letting the colors diffuse one into the other, and I'm working with lemon yellow, cerulean blue, and alizarin crimson. So each of those are pretty high hue levels. So I'll do this for a little bit, and then I think what I would like to do is work with some pebble drawings. Oh, that was not clean water at all, was it? Let's try that again. Even though they're the primaries, there's still some good strong choices, and I think it'll be interesting to see how the colors operate. Alrighty. So I haven't done swatching in a while, so no guarantees. These are not going to be expert level swatches. Liza, I'm 62, so when I was a kid was literally last century. And, we just ran around with sticks and rocks. No, I'm joking. Uh, I had a toy that was a smoky bear, and he went everywhere with me until I about snuggled the fuzz right off of him. But I have the sneaking impression that you are considerably younger than our average age of the rest of. Because I can see on the analytics, and I look at the demographics, and it's like we skew closer to 64 and 24. Yeah, Dan, I think we can get there. I think I just need to go away from the true primaries and an elf. Dan K says he had an elf when he was a kid. That seems a little bit. Wasn't Alf like a little bit like? Didn't he threaten to eat cats and things like that? I don't know. Was that very comforting? Oh, Maya got an airbrush. Okay. That I years ago used an airbrush to put underglaze on ceramics, and they are a ton of fun. I think you're gonna have two orange, immediately two orange. You're gonna have some fun with that, I think. Oh, let's get a little crimson in there too. Oh, there we go. More orange, more orange. Liza bought some. She resupplied herself with art supplies. What did you get? Tell us. Tell us. Tell us. So, Matt, I don't know if you're still in here, but I just want to wish you a lot of luck with your procedure tomorrow. I'll keep you in my thoughts, and I am just really crossing my fingers that that goes very well for you, and that it exceeds whatever expectations they might have. Um, I know we're kind of getting late in the hour, so if you have to slip away and rest up for that, I certainly understand. And if you want to hang out and just have some company while you're um, counting down, that's really cool too. Just let us know what we can do, and alrighty. Got this beautiful. How's that, Dan? Is that what you were? Isn't that gorgeous? This beautiful indigo blue. Pencils, paints, brushes, and paper. And black pens. Oh my goodness. You are going to be set. That is going to be, you're going to, it's hard to find words when I'm painting, and especially when I'm doing something new I haven't done. So please forgive me in my mumbling, but yeah, it's always, isn't it kind of inspiring to get some new stuff and just can't wait to start putting the colors on the paper and seeing how things. Get those pencils and pens out and see what kind of lines they can make. The trick with that, Liza, when your siblings swipe your supplies, is to buy them some of their own. Especially if they're younger siblings. I'm going to cheat this with some Viridian. I really love this color. Sneak that in at the top and the bottom. Get the whole rainbow going here. So Maya, the art supplies I ordered, they haven't even arrived yet, and I've got like the second nagging email from the company asking me to rate the supplies. So I ignored the first one, and then they sent another one today, and I went to the tracking number to see what was up, and so they shipped out of Illinois, headed to Oregon, and they're now in Wisconsin. That doesn't seem like it's making progress towards me. That seems like it's heading away from me. So I sent them a quick email and told them that if they expected me to say nice things about them, perhaps they should get my package directed more towards me. And that 14 days was equivalent of Pony Express as opposed to express delivery. And kindly please stop asking me how I like my art supplies that I have not yet received. So I put that in the drafts folder. Sometimes it just feels good to write those letters, and then, maybe it's not, doesn't really help them to, doesn't help the stuff get here sooner to let everybody know what I was thinking, but I got it out of my, little bit out of my system. Why Illinois to Wisconsin on the way to, heck, you could put it on a buckboard on the Oregon Trail and get it here sooner. I am managing to make a huge mess in my palette tonight. So I was hoping that blue and purple would make, or the blue would move into the red and make more of a purple, but it's not. All right, I think that's enough of a mess for one piece of paper. We'll move on. Well, it was headed towards sunset a minute there, Dan K, and then it, you've been around here enough to see how things kind of take their own direction. So one thing I've learned about watercolors is that different paints, different colors, like a blue is not a blue is not a blue. And cerulean will mix very differently from, say, Windsor blue or cobalt blue or ultramarine blue. And a lemon yellow will mix very differently than maybe a cadmium yellow. Yeah, my especially if I'm already close to the edge, it's just thank goodness for the drafts folder. Really, is all I can say. It sometimes just, I talk to the cat, but the cat does get tired of hearing it. Ugh. They're just swatches. They're just swatches. Well, and I think part of what was irritating to me is that I had looked a couple of days ago and it said that the package had left Illinois, and then Like, even if it's coming by truck, it shouldn't take 14 days to get halfway across. You know, I don't understand a system that takes that long. And the other thing that I find irritating about it is that very early in the ordering process, I got this pop-up that said, um, here's a code for free shipping, right? It wasn't that it was standard for orders over $50. It was, you know, kind of made a big deal about, oh, if you do this, you'll qualify for free shipping. Okay, all right. So I mean, $50 is a fair amount of money, I think. Again, see above, old. And I mean, I think I would rather get like a discount to pay an actually like a nominal fee, say something under $10 to get maybe 5 to 6 day shipping. Like that's the sweet spot for me. But there were tons of pop-ups throughout the process, and then when I get to checkout, like I'm committed because I've already like seen the thing 5 6 times. So I'm pretty locked in mentally to, all right, let's do the free shipping thing. And then you get to checkout and it says, hey, would you like to get 1 to 2 day shipping? And so I think, you know, and it says there's a fee upgrade. And the fee upgrade to get 1 to 2 day shipping is $20. Uh, which you may tell by my exclamation. I found that shocking. I thought uh, that was quite an upcharge. And there was something in the middle, but it was also like over $10. So I just thought, well, you're bait and switching me, and I'm not going to play that game. And also, that's not what it costs, and you're not splitting out the handling fee. So that seemed a little bit deceptive to me. And I when I feel like the business is being deceptive, I'm less likely to get any more money out of my pocket. So when I saw those, and I was like, ah, heck no. You said free shipping, I'm going to free shipping. And of course, you know, now I'm complaining about free shipping takes 2 weeks. I don't know. They could have just been upfront with it, and I think I would have felt less like I was getting tricked and manipulated. Hmm. So you might have noticed there that I am struggling a bit to get these two colors to blend into a nice gradient. And it could be if I switched from alizarin crimson to stayed with the red but went to a different blue. Um, not just could be, would be. I would have a whole different purples in between these two. So having this swatch, I'll mark the color names on them and I'll just tuck them into my, I have tags that I do swatches on, and I just punch a hole in them and put them on one of those rings, stationary ring that opens up, and then I throw them in when I'm looking for a color to not to match it, but to know, you know, which two will get me into the color that I'm looking for. So it's always learning. Every time I swatch, I learn something about the paints. And if the Pony Express ever arrives, I'll have 20 more colors to put into the mix and try to figure out. So that'll be fun. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I just unreasonable or expect too much or I don't know. It feels like sometimes like the internet's just the wild west of consumer fraud. Oh, I'm not. Maya asks, "What color am I looking for?" I'm not looking for any particular color. What I'm trying to learn is what is the range of colors I get in between. This is Koi brand cobalt blue, or no, cerulean blue, I think, and this is alizarin crimson. So these purples skew really heavily red. And then this is lemon yellow to the alizarin crimson, lemon yellow to the cerulean blue again. Alrighty, I'm going to do one more stripe on this one. And then let's do a pebble. I always think red is just the bully of watercolor paints because it just goes everywhere and tells everybody what color to be. And with modern paint, a lot of the reds are made with chemical colorants, and those just tend to be very vibrant. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of a dull, weak purple, so I cerulean blue isn't my favorite blue for mixing purples. I really like there's Winsor and Newton makes a phthalo blue that is quite beautiful for and it's not here handy, so I'm not going to go digging for it, but if it was here handy I would have just mixed up a little comparison swatch so we could take a look at it, but let's let that dry down and we'll take a look at it a little bit later. Yeah. So Dan has a question here, which is that do different pigment types blend differently or potentially not blend well with other pigment types? Um, Let me process that a second. Strictly speaking, within a range of watercolor paints, let's say you go to a brand, and then I would also say that, like, I probably have 4 different brands mixed in here, and they work with each other. Watercolor paints they are standardized, so the different pigments will work. The paint is made of a mixture of ground up, could be earth elements, it could be chemicals. In cadmium, reds, oranges, and yellows are they're not mined. The cadmium isn't mined. It's a compound that's made in a lab or something along those lines. And that pigment is ground up very finely, and then it's mixed with some water, and it's mixed with a binder, which could be anything from honey to, traditionally, it's gum arabic, which is derived from a tree, and it's just sticky, and it dries, and it can be ground into a powder and then reconstituted with water. And when it's mixed with the finely ground pigments, then it sticks to the page. So if you just had finely ground pigments and you put them in water, you would, as soon as they dried, they would flake off of the paper. So watercolor paint needs to have a binder. Now, I think if a pigment were to have a reaction to another pigment, it would not make its way into watercolor paint. Like if the two molecules for some reason repelled each other, and so when they came into contact they were repelled and they would then be forced back across the pool of water, that would be a really undesirable effect in watercolor painting. So that would mean that pigment would probably be disqualified for being introduced into the line of watercolor paints. So I am sensing that was maybe not exactly the question you were asking. And I think the question you might have been asking was more along the lines of, do all of the pigments mix well with each other to make blends that are visually appealing? And the answer to that question is that you can take a set of watercolors and you can mix 2 or 3 of them and you can make a very unappealing color. But like functionally, they will all intermix. With an exception, because you know me, there's always an exception, and that is something called granulating colors. And those colors, even when they're in a wash by themselves, the pigment is and they're made this way to get a particular effect in watercolor. And by granulating, what we mean is you put a wash of color across the paper, and then as it dries, the pigment clumps together and it can make little speckles and spots, which are really wonderful for landscape effects. And granulating colors tend to be a little bit challenging to make other colors with because of that property. So, and in any kind of a set, like a school color set, it's not going to contain granulating colors. But I think I can demonstrate that really quickly. I do believe Terra Verde is granulating. We'll say I think granulating colors is probably advanced intermediate level watercoloring, but it's an interesting thing, so let's just take a quick look and see what it does. So right off the bat, do you see how it's almost separating out from with the dark areas and the splotches? I'll drop quite a bit of pigment up here and then maybe down here, and then we'll let this dry down and we'll watch what it does, because I think it's kind of cool. But if you are trying to paint a smooth sky or, some smooth expanse of color and the paint does this, it can be very frustrating. But the paper has texture to it, so the pigment's got little low spots that it can settle into, and it'll do that as it dries. So if I were to take that green and to try to mix another wash with it, what would happen is it would be kind of, I would say, very unpredictable in how it operates. Which, if you know that ahead of time, like you look at your swatch and say, oh, okay, that's what that paint does, you might find something that you're painting that has that texture, and it can work very well with it. But again, if you're trying to do an expanse of smooth sky, granulating color will not be your friend. Alrighty, let's take a look at chat and see. Yeah, I think so I think I answered the question, but as long as if you've got a formula for watercolor, you can actually, you can actually use, I mean, you can always use watercolors with watercolors, and you can use watercolors with gouache, which is an opaque but water-based paint. Um, and technically, you can use watercolors with acrylic mediums and usually not get any untoward effects. But you can't mix oil paints with watercolors, gouache, or acrylic. So acrylic paints dry, and then you can't. They dry, and there's an acrylic polymer in there. So when they dry, they're waterproof, and you can't just take a brush to them and then re-wet them and get them to move around the way I do with the watercolor. But if you take a watercolor paint and you mix it with an acrylic medium and you get enough acrylic medium in there, you can make a permanent paint out of a watercolor. Which usually, I mean, I think if you took a hose to it, you might be able to get the pigment to, you might be able to reactivate the gum arabic, but when I've done that, the acrylic medium has always functionally dominated the mix. So chemically, I would say chemically that the watercolor pigments, watercolor paints will, I can mix any color with any other color and it's going to function as a paint. It just may not look very good. So we've now completed the over answering portion of tonight's program. I have mixed granulating greens with granulating blues, and what you end up with is a confetti of green and blue. You don't get the larger bits of pigment. Um, they they granulate because they're not dispersing well in water, and if they don't disperse well, then they can't blend with another color. So what you end up with are two different types of granules. I think mostly that, yeah, that's been my experience with it. And that's a good observation because I do have a violet that's granulating, and the way it disperses is is individual to that pigment. So granulating isn't a uniform thing; it's individual, and it's varied across. Which is to say, each type granulates in its own way. Yeah, Maya, what kinds of things do you like to use, like foregrounds and landscapes for the granulating colors, or just kind of depends on the painting? Um, Let me actually make a question out of that. Yeah, what do you use? granulating colors for in your paintings? Oh, Maya, I wish you'd been here earlier. Matthew came in, and he said, um, I think he asked, "What do you think of Scientology?" And I just, he didn't. He was just scrolling through random live streams. He didn't realize that he knew who I was. So I corked off quite the answer. He just went, "Whoa! Oh wait, it's Janelle." Okay, hello. I love that. Just sitting cruising around on live streams, just waiting to educate people about what's going on. It's just like, wait a minute, I know you. Yeah, nice. So Maya says she likes to use granulating watercolors in landscapes, oceans, and stormy skies. Oh yeah, yeah, it's good for stormy skies. Yeah, do you have a favorite granulating blue that you like? I know if he's cruising around asking that question, he might get like, what's Scientology? Or confusion, but you know, spreading the word is spreading the word. The more young people who ask that question before they get offered a copy of The Way to Happiness, the better. Oh, ultramarine. Huh. Okay. I guess I'm trying to think about last time I've done a wash using ultramarine blue, and it's probably literally been years. But I don't I didn't just think of ultramarine blue as being granulating, but when I stopped and pondered it a moment, and I guess yeah, it is. But it's got very fine grain. Somewhere in my paint box, I've got a brick red that granulates, and I couldn't tell you without getting things out and doing some swatches which one it was, but I love it for brick buildings. It's almost a kind of a terracotta red. Hey, Randy. Good morning. Nice to see you. Maya, do you recall offhand what color blue you used for those winter trees? Was that ultramarine? Yeah, this is still fairly like it's shiny in this area right here. But you see how it's just starting to kind of make its own texture. And I don't even know. I think in the standard ranges of colors, if you were just to go down to Michael's or something like that, trying to find Terra Verde, um, or Green Earth, like it wouldn't be in the standard line. You'd probably have to go look at the artist's range to find it, because it's now we have modern pigments that behave in a much more predictable way and that have a more vibrant hue. So it's sort of an old-fashioned color. That paint is literally from the 1940s. But any of the ones that I've put into these little containers, they've come out of tubes that have where they've gotten dried, and I've split the tube and reclaimed the paint. All right, Dan. Thanks for coming in and thanks for chatting. It was, as always, lovely to have you here. And yeah, let me get these swatches if you want a quick look before you peel out. There's our blue to our red and our. You see how that alizarin crimson, like it marched all the way over into the lemon yellow and just dominates it. So it's not a very polite red. And this swatch, I mixed the colors on the palette and then dabbed them on, and so there's kind of a nice range of oranges in here, and it's kind of a nice, almost a vermilion green in between the cerulean blue and the lemon yellow, but I'm not real thrilled with any of those purples, so if I was going to mix a purple, I would probably use definitely a different blue and probably a different, maybe, I don't know, maybe rose madder. That makes some really gorgeous purples. I don't know. It went from a sunset into kind of a rainbow. And then this is just a stripe of lemon yellow, alizarin crimson, cerulean blue. I let those dry. And then I took another sweep across with a wash of yellow, a wash of the red, and a wash of the blue. So I'll probably find a way to come back and explore that red, yellow, and blue. maybe not the strict bright primaries, but maybe a sunsetty red and a nice golden yellow and a deep purpley blue, I think would be probably, I think we can make some gorgeous things out of those. We'll just shift the choices just a little bit. But as always, anytime, any three, there's something to be learned. And it's just a piece of paper, so there's really not anything to be lost. If I was going to be super frugal, I could use the back of it, but um, I I really don't, because once you get it wet, and if you've got pigment and then it's on the backside, you're you're always getting dampness through, and you're transferring paper, and it can make a mess. So there it is. We found the outer limits of my thriftiness. One of them anyway. On this one, Dan? Yeah. These blends in here. Or like in here. Yeah, I like these colors are pretty well too. And then it would just wouldn't be my favorite, but when I look at it, I also my eye finds this range kind of lovely to look at as well. Yeah. I know. I always come home to blue greens. I I make myself go over to the yellows and oranges. Um, but I really like purples, and I really like blue greens. Thank you for the suggestion, and I hope you get some rest and have a great day tomorrow. Thanks for popping in. Randy, okay, all right, yeah. Would you do me a kindness, and when hi Barbara, Randy, if I say something that doesn't make any darn sense, please just throw a question up there, and I will try to come back to it and explain it in a way that's comprehensible. Because I'm guessing if you are going, I wonder what the heck that means, that probably you're not the only one who I have confused. And it is just a little bit challenging. By that I mean it is a lot challenging to be here kind of in a room by myself, not kind of, but actually in a room by myself, talking to myself. And my goal is to make art stuff accessible. So you would do me a huge favor if you would just pop a question in and say, huh? Or what does that mean? Or what does that mean? Because I certainly can get in the weeds talking about this stuff. But it's more important to me that I encourage people to be creative in whatever way works for them. Whether it's a coloring book, and I myself spend a lot of hours coloring. Somebody else draws the lines. All I have to do is pick a color, and get my hand going, and or whether it's to encourage somebody who's got some experience to go to their easel and, whatever level you are at, just be creative in whatever way you can be. It'll it'll really having a hobby and having something to do with your hands is it's really good for you. Helps you to have a calm spot in your day. And heck, even if you don't, even if you're just here to watch a goofy person on the internet draw little circles, that's great too. Barbara. So, Barbara, it's good to see you. Barbara says she spends more time setting up and cleaning up than actually making art. That's me when I try to bake. I always like to get all of my ingredients out and then all of my measuring implements, and um, I certainly go through phases with art where I just spend inordinate and like such huge amounts of times getting everything out and then looking at stuff and going, well, maybe I need, and I'll dig out a whole nother bunch of tools. And then I do this particularly when I'm working with beading. I'll have an idea in mind and I'll get out the beads and supplies I need for the project, and then know if I'm gonna do this kind of bead, then I need this other wire, and I can literally make myself stay in the setup phase for days, and just the productivity is level zero. And over the years, I've come to recognize that sometimes when I am at a creative impasse, that rather than just confront the fact that I am just out of ideas and creativity for a particular media, that now I'm just in the sorting and shuffling phase. And so when I recognize it, I take it as a sign to basically put all that stuff away and then switch off to, like, I might go from beading to painting to polymer clay to fiber arts, whether it's knitting, or I also quilt, and I like to make garments, and I like to sew things, whether it's garments, quilts, bags, and sometimes it's sometimes we just have to take time and switch the gears and move to something else for a while. Um, mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really in a distracted mode. I'd been working on an art journal that was kind of half art journal, kind of half scrapbook, with lots of ephemera that I'd gathered on a trip that I made down to California. And I'd kind of, hit the wall with it. There was still there's still a box of stickers and photos and postcards to go in it, but I'd hit the wall and did a sidestep to try to break out of that sorting, because as an autistic person, sorting stuff out by color, shape, and size is just, it's a happy place. And I was kind of in a sorting mode for like 2 months, and I just went, I want to get this thing done so I can move on to the next project. And um, I started doing these mindfulness paintings to try to get myself out of thinking and back into doing. And probably within, I worked on these pebble drawings for about a week, and then I cranked back over and finished up that art journal, and like finished it, put something on every darn page of the whole journal, and then inserted some pockets so I could tuck in maps and some other ephemera, and um, it did wrap things up pretty well. So I think it's really easy to fall in that trap of just thinking about stuff and pondering it. Mm. Oh, Randy. Yeah, Randy says that my main problem is I look at the page and go blank, and then I put paint on it and go blank, and then I get frustrated and go outside. Well, getting frustrated and going outside is, that's pretty good coping, so I'll give you a couple of points there. And, um, yeah, Barbara says blank is her nemesis. I have said this several times, and I will keep saying it, but I refer to that as the tyranny of the blank page. It just seems to rule us sometimes. And there's nothing for it except to mark the page. So I sometimes with my art journal will start with spray inks. The last art journal I got, before I even started anything in it, I set up outside with paper down on a bench out on my deck and got the spray inks and the rubber stamps and um, archival inks, permanent inks, and just I didn't do every single page, but I sprayed and stenciled and stamped. I picked a group of rubber stamps that were kind of in the same theme, and I just blasted into the book. And it had later when I went to put the ephemera in those pages that already had something a little bit started, whether it was a splash of the spray inks or whether it was a line of rubber stamps down the side. It wasn't so tyrannical. It it wasn't bullying me around, and um, sometimes it seems like you open it and it's just a blank page, just going, yeah, what are you gonna do? I'm pristine. You're not gonna make a mark here, are you? Yeah, I am. I'm gonna make marks all over you. Get ready. Well, Randy, it's just a, it's just a phase. A lot of times, I mean, you've seen these guys, right? You've been here long enough. I mean, that's not a pretty phase. This one's got a lot of color, but it's got a ways to go. I mean, we work through them. My motto is it just needs another layer, right? So all of these have had phases where they weren't great. Um, I mean, it's a bit of a different style that I'm working on here. It's not just, a beautiful pencil drawing of a still life that's sitting right in front of me. Those, it's a little bit more challenging to work through an ugly phase, but um, don't let it totally throw you. Just try to think of it as an opportunity to go multimedia on that page, and maybe it needs a layer of gesso and some stenciling, or maybe it needs yanked out of the book and thrown away. You can do whatever you like with it. It's okay. I've got a really standard range. I think I have two or three different sets of colored pencils, and they were all like sets of 24 or 48. So I've got bright green, but not mossy green. I'm finding that a little frustrating right now. So I was hoping that art supply place that I ordered from was going to be good to work with, because I did find some open stock watercolor pencils that I was looking at them, but I thought I'm gonna wait and see how they do on the first order before I give them $150 to disappear with. And then Maya got me thinking about a brand called Inktense. So maybe I'll make a trip up to I'm about an hour's drive away from a really great art supply store. And I am being a bit lazy with it because I have enough watercolors to mix any sort of color I want, but it's just kind of nice to drop in those shadows with pencils, because you can place the color really precisely. Alrighty, let's see what the chat's up to here. Barbara points out that sometimes after the paint dries, she actually doesn't hate it anymore. I find that too, especially watercolor. It's got a subtlety that doesn't really reveal itself until it dries down. Mm. Oh, Randy, we're just 2 years apart. We're really close in age. Um, and I love being outside too, but I had the heart procedure done about I just realized I'm at 6 months out from that, and they put 6 stents in my heart, so that really curtailed my hiking and running around outside. But it should be all. I'm getting pretty close to when I can stop taking so many blood thinners, and I should be able to try to reclaim my outdoor life. But I'm also I have ADD, so I get bored with stuff, and my interest jumps ahead of me quite a lot. So I'll just say this: it's okay to go do something else if you're not enjoying yourself and you're bored and your mind is spinning. I mean, we're in our 60s. We've earned being able to go to the next thing if we want to. Alcohol inks. Um, nice. I'm just catching up in the chat here to see what you guys are up to. Oh, man. Exactly. You guys are talking about the frustration of not having things be the quality that you think. And particularly when you're comparing your work to what's going on social media. I mean, I deliberately don't curate this. I mean, you've noticed that. It's not ultra high quality here. I don't know if you saw this. I made this little booklet using that folding method out of it's just a McDonald's paper bag that it had images on it, and it was kind of amusing to me, so I haven't decided what I'll put in it, or if I might mix up a gesso wash and just so the lines kind of come through, but they're not as bold as they are. But that's a little freebie. And then here's another paper that I used the spray inks, and I just sprayed a piece of bubble wrap with the spray ink, and then I put the paper down on top of it and did several layers. And this piece of paper has been kicking around in my studio for probably 2 or 3 years, and I thought, oh, it's kind of a cool piece of paper, but I haven't found anything to use it, so I made a little booklet, and I will probably use it to mount some of these little drawings in, or just keep busy as best you can. Yeah. Tampa Bee Man says Picasso had thousands of art that he didn't like. That's true. One of my favorite artist quotes is attributed to Pablo Picasso, which is that he was asked about inspiration, and he said he didn't really know what inspiration was, but he hoped that when it came, that it found him working. Which is a bit of a roundabout way of saying, if you're not working, then it really doesn't matter what creativity or inspiration is. If you're not working, it's not going to manifest. In order to have good work manifest, you've got to be at the workbench, you've got to be at the easel, you've got to be cranking something out. And very few of us are like Mary Engelbreit, right? That's an illustrator that I think every time she sits down that she probably comes out with an illustration that's amusing and clever and high quality. But I think if you were talking to Mary Engelbreit, she would say, "Oh no, I spent a lot of hours at my drafting table just making things that were good for the recycling basket." That's probably all of us. The trick to it is to continue with the work. And I'm gonna grab something here in a second and just remind you guys of what these pebble drawings looked like when I started doing them in June. So I feel like now I'm pretty satisfied with how I can make the rocks look like rocks. But the first one I did, it looked like there was a good idea and something might come of it, but it didn't look fantastic. And here it is. You see how all my little circles are just piled up, and there's My shadows are the shadows are kind of awkward, and we got this weird green over on this side. I spent hours on this thing too, right? And I get done with it, and I was like, I don't really love that. Like, I love the colors. I like the potential. I like that I could see some idea of something of what was to come. But, you know, it took several more drawings before it really manifested. It just takes practice. We need to be more kind to ourselves and allow ourselves to have the time to practice, to experiment with other ideas. Like this one. I'm not going to buy a frame for that one. I mean, I kind of like the colors, but... And then somewhere along the line, I kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough with it. The shapes started to overlap each other and actually look like pebbles on a beach. That one was kind of recent. I mean, I think it's really just come a long way. And it's purely a function of coming back to it and just working it out a little bit more, a little bit more. Yeah, this one's got a lot of those colors that we saw in that first one, and it's very different. So oh, so what do I do with the little booklets? I will take little pieces of ephemera, maybe a snippet of a postcard or a photo, or I don't know. I don't know yet what it will be, but it might sit on my workbench for a long time if I know me. I, I do have a bad habit of doing that. There's something I've been seeing on YouTube called junk journals, where the artist takes a collection of things. Maybe it's a little bit, a little assortment of ephemera, and maybe it's got like all little bits of things that have birds, or maybe all little bits of paper and stamps that have some red. And they just do a little composition in the junk journal. And I think they're made out of bits of packaging and stuff that is salvaged out of the recycling bin, which is how they got called junk journals, but they're really cute. And some of them have themes that go all the way through, and some of them just have each page as its own theme. And I love collecting little bits of stuff. I have little packets of things that I wasn't quite sure what to do with, but I think I'm gonna experiment and do maybe a junk journal type of a project with them. And if you put that search term junk journal into your up into the little search bar, you'll come up with all kinds of just really interesting little videos. You know, a few minutes to a half an hour video. And that might give you some inspiration about what you could do with those little books, because those I love I love, making bits and pieces of this and that and components. I'm not real great at the I mean, I like making components. I'm not necessarily the best when it comes to putting all the components together into a completed art journal. That's not my strength at this point. I have to work on that. Oh, planning a painting. Oh, yes, I can waste 2 years planning a painting. Barbara says she wants to do some pebble drawing stuff now. Go for it. I want you to do that. And I want you to put pictures or little videos up so I can see what you do with it. Oh, Randy. It's Randy says that she doesn't have that kind of thinking to manifest work, and you wonder if you don't think enough about what to make. I am a process person. I I can really get lost in the weeds. And here's an example. So I've got a bunch of yarn and I want to get to knitting. And a couple of months ago, I said to myself, I want to knit something. And then I hadn't been knitting for a while, so I know I need to start with a small project and get warmed up, get so that my gauge is consistent. And you don't really want to start a sweater if you haven't been knitting for the last 5 years. It's better to start with a hat or a scarf or something where if you're off gauge or if your stitches aren't consistent, because it does, you have muscle memory with that, but you also have to stay in practice with it. And I'm kind of finicky about the details of my knitting. I like it to look, what looks good to my eye is that when the stitches are consistent. And so you just have to practice a little bit and get warmed up back to it. And so I ended up getting out every knitting pattern book I have, and I ended up spending 3 weeks just looking for a hat pattern, and then I squirreled over to painting, and the knitting stuff is all sitting in the other room. And I do I have a hat going? Nope. So if you know that that's your kind of, I don't want to use judgmental language about it because it's just how I am, it's just how I operate. But it's not a habit that leads to productivity, really. So if I had instead just made the priority to start knitting anything, I might well have, a whole nice new wardrobe of winter woolens for this fall. But I really fell into the trap of finding I had an idea for the lace pattern that I wanted on the particular type of hat, and I just kept hunting and hunting for a pattern and went through all of my books and then ended up over on Ravelry. And I think it's important to find a balance of prioritizing the doing as well as the preparation for the. Seeing the amount of time I've been talking about it, I could have cast on for a hat. There we go. Now, Randy, maybe you could, well, you certainly could call yourself a hobbyist. It's a lot to say I'm an artist. Okay, Liza. Liza looks like it looks like Liza asked Randy if it's raining in her country, and okay, so um, I'm not sure why that was hidden. There, you didn't do anything wrong. Oh boy, trying to catch up in chat here. Every once in a while, I scroll back a little bit, and it kind of freezes the chat. Yeah, don't start with a sweater. I know. If I started with a sweater, like once I get into it after I've been knitting for, a pair of gloves, a hat, and a scarf, then everything's even and I can really stay on gauge. But that first, like getting warmed up and getting the muscles kind of strong enough, it would make for a Dr. Seuss sweater of some description. Yeah, and we got a comment. It's about having fun, not making it perfect. Exactly. I know. I'm perfectionism. I do. I embrace the perfectionism myself. Um, Perfectionism can be the enemy of progress, though. So as long as you can kind of keep it down to a dull roar, um, and maybe we could just call it craftsmanship instead of perfectionism, and then we can get away with it. How's that? I keep losing my place here. Yeah, I had a friend in college who would he would say to me, "Janelle, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be." He was quite good at just getting on with things, and something that's done to a fairly good standard compared to something that's not done at all. The thing that's done to a sort of medium standard, it wins, doesn't it? But I do find that, um, particularly as I've had some opportunities to reevaluate the time I have left and what kind of work I want to do, that I have let go of some of that perfectionism, and I've found more. I don't know if it's joy. I'm really not a person who joy is not in my everyday vocabulary, but I've certainly found some satisfaction and some contentment with the way projects turn out, and I do really take a moment to feel that sense of accomplishment when I get something completed rather than just ignoring that that was an effort, because it does takes a lot of energy and stick to itiveness or whatever you want to call it, persistence, I guess, maybe, to get to the completion of any kind of a project. Oh, Randy, thanks for coming in, and I always appreciate you being here. Enjoy that dog walk. I like dogs, but only if I can borrow them from somebody else. And I used to go hiking with somebody who had a couple of German Shepherds, and they sure add something to the outdoor adventure. I always love how dogs stop and give things a look and a sniff. Hey there. Okay, well, look at that time. So this will need to dry down for a bit, and then I will come back in and soften up those highlights that I just put in. I think we'll take one more look at this granulating color. Get some extra light on it. And it's still, boy, it's taking its time to dry down there, and that one spot is still wet. But you can see how there's almost a mottled effect and a break in the way that color dries down, that wash. So it's odd. I'm not sure if I would say that this is strictly granulating, because the splotches and characteristic texture are pretty good size. A lot of granulating colors will have much finer grain to it, but this was a sample of a color called Green Earth, or Terra Verde, and this was some vintage paint from 1940s or 50s, way back. It's just a uniform green here, but then when it dries, it gets almost this whitish sort of a sheen to it. So take a quick look and see if I think here's we started off with some swatches, and those have all dried down. And this swatch, I worked with wet and wet, so there was water put on the paper and then a little bit of the spray pigment at each end, and then allowed the pigments to blend in the middle. And this swatch was just to explore how the different pigments, alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, and lemon yellow, how they interact with each other. So you do a little swatch experiment, and then you have a better idea of what happens in your finished artwork. Yeah, inks, particularly the alcohol inks, they have some terrific effects. And Yeah, so I find inks fairly challenging. Especially the ones that have a dye base, they really kind of go where they want, and then they make themselves permanent, and you do kind of have to work around them. So that is definitely a challenging medium that introduces an awful lot of um, unpredictability, serendipity. I'm not not quite sure, not quite sure how we want to characterize it, but you do have to kind of turn yourself over to the whims of the medium, which is sometimes that's a great exercise in creativity. Yeah. Well, you guys, I hope everybody has a terrific weekend. Take some time for art. Take some time to be kind to yourselves. And I will see you here next time. Thank you, everybody who's come in. Thanks for your likes. Thanks for your watch hours. Thanks for your chat. I just appreciate it all so very, very much. Thank you again. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Welcome back, Maya. And we'll see you next time.